From UN headquarters in New York, I'm Luke Vargas. The UN has issued a $22.2 billion funding request to support its humanitarian activities in 2017. This is the most money the UN has ever asked for. It's an increase of about $100 million from the request for 2016. Now, the 2017 humanitarian funding request covers about 33 different countries, most of them in the Middle East and in Central Africa, a band of countries stretching from Senegal in the west to Somalia in the east. Some of the big shifts in funding this year occur in Nigeria, a country that is continuing to struggle with the Boko Haram insurgency, which has displaced millions of people and uprooted a lot of livelihoods. Syria also, there's going to be a 6% increase in the funding request to support the crisis there, bringing the total Syria appeal to about $3.4 billion. On top of that, there's a second Syria-related appeal for the regional refugee response, the countries in the neighborhood of Syria affected by the refugee problem. That's an additional $4.7 billion. So while the increase isn't that much, this is a huge chunk of the UN humanitarian funding request. And the UN is having some real problems with funding for its appeals. Only 52% of all the money they asked for this year in 2016 has been received. And if you go to the 40 different countries that the UN was asking for support this year, only about 1/4 of them got the more than 50% of the money requested. So suffice it to say, there's a big record shortfall in UN humanitarian support. I talked to the UN spokesperson today, Stéphane Dujarric, who said, look, the biggest thing we can do to avoid a shortfall in 2017 is to address the underlying conflicts here. That's sort of the party line, but there's some truth to it. 80% of the money the UN is asking for in 2017 concerns man-made conflicts, not things like El Nino, wars, and other sorts of problems that conceivably could be brought to an end and thus reduce the need for any funding in the first place. Now, it's worth pointing out there is some change afoot here at the United Nations. There's going to be a new UN Secretary General in January, Antonio Guterres from Portugal, someone who a lot of the people I've spoken to say is an excellent communicator, someone who in his 10 years of running the UN's refugee agency was very good at both bringing together coalitions to help with certain issues, but also calling out countries for lack of funding or for having a lack of political will to solve challenges. So at a time when the UN has really severe budgetary concerns, maybe someone like Guterres is a good pick to lead this organization. From UN headquarters in New York, I'm Luke Vargas.